It seems as though the justice system has finally caught up to what is right and what is wrong, and they are putting singer David on trial for the ending of the life of Celeste, his at the time minor girlfriend. It's strange because the internet found this disturbing connection between David and Celeste almost immediately, but it took nearly a year after her remains were discovered and 15 months after prosecutors to say that she was killed for the judge to finally start the David trial. And now it looks like he will have to face some sort of reckoning in the courtroom. The truth that we ultimately suspected about the Celeste and David case is finally coming to light. But the thing is, it took us over a year to get here, and we're trying to figure out why. If you're new to this and you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It's gonna go a long way for the channel. I don't know if you noticed in these serious videos, I don't have anything witty to say here. I'm just telling you to subscribe. Now, back into the video. A judge has ruled there is enough evidence for singer David's murder case to move forward to trial. The decision came after a 5-day preliminary hearing where prosecutors presented evidence in the case involving the death of Celeste Rivera Hernandez. David, whose legal name is David Anthony Burke, has pleaded not guilty to murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and human remains. He remains in custody without bail, and his next court hearing is scheduled for August 31st. These are words that I think the internet was waiting to hear after a long journey to get to this point, and after the internet detectives did everything they needed to do. I think that people would get that the alleged timeline happened over a year ago. On April 23rd, that's when the alleged ending of Celeste's life occurred, and then on September 8th, in the back of a Tesla trunk, is when those remains of her body were found. The arrest of David would come months later in April of 2026, and he would just be ordered to stand trial on July 27, 2026. That's around 12 months from the alleged ending of her life all the way up to the arrest, and around 15 months to make some sort of decision about David standing on trial. Now, while I am happy that, we are on the path road to justice for the Hernandez family, because, I feel like every time I read this headline, I get reminded first, and honestly, importantly, that this girl was just that, a girl. It seems as though this took like so long. And it only took so long for those that were a part of the criminal justice system. For the internet, they didn't need much time to figure out the connection between David and Celeste. Because mind you, a lot of their alleged connections and relationship were sitting right on the internet, on twitter.com, twitch.tv, and Reddit.
Is your media trained?
I personally don't.
Yo, I media trained you.
No, you didn't.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of kids.
Really good.
Okay,
it's been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh my. Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes.
They shared photos together. They shared live streams together. They had matching David and tattoos on their bodies. They had a long online relationship. Hell, even her remains were found in the back of a Tesla that was registered to David himself. And on top of that, I think it should be established that David knew that Celeste was a minor of some sort for a very long time. All in all, what I'm trying to paint out there is that these two were clearly not strangers. Everything that was posted online said so, and the only people that were kind of left questioning whether it be true or not seemed to be the police department. Now, I will say what the stuff online didn't prove is how she died, where she was killed at, what caused her injuries, who moved her remains. And I think all of that stuff did put all of the online evidence that would be gathered in court up to question. You can't just go into one of these situations haphazardly and potentially try him without having all of your ducks in a row so that, later down the line, it might not go through the way that you expect it to go. So all in all, while the internet did find the proof of the relationship, the connection between the two, and some of the sick, twisted things that David might have even felt about her through his song lyrics and his music videos, it was still the investigator's job to prove that he was the one who indeed did take her life. But this is where it gets interesting. They finally said that they can charge David with the ending of Celeste's life. So they must have had some sort of information that was grander than what we even had on social media. And what I found out while doing research for this video is honestly disturbing, but it points to really only one clear answer who could have done this. Chainsaws, cadaver bags, shovels, heavy-duty trash bags, cleaning supplies, and much more were all purchased after Celeste's disappearance. Now, I'm no dummy. I'm pretty sure you guys aren't either. We may be unemployed, but that does not mean we're not smart. This all points to a couple of different things being a real possibility. David basically read How to Get Rid of a Body 101 with the stuff that he had bought online. Now, why this stuff does matter is because this raises a potential connection to the concealment, and it supports the prosecution's theory about the timeline that they have about, Celeste and David. And while the purchases don't prove without a shadow of a doubt that there was 100% of murder done by David, it does create this sort of traceable digital trail that can leak you back to this crime that was done. I don't think that most people on a random are purchasing like cadaver bags and cleaning supplies and shovel. what could you even be doing with that? I can't even think of something else that you, a music video or something like that. I don't know. What could you be doing with this? But it gets even worse for David. They found that there was a connection between David's cell phone and its Tesla, showing that they traveled together, specifically near Highway 54, where Celeste's ID was allegedly found. And to put the icing on the cake, there was even physical evidence found. Apparently there was blood inside David's home and garage. Celeste's DNA reportedly found on several different objects around David's house. Look, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it seems as though you're not gonna be ducking any of this jail time anytime soon. And there may be some sort of defense that could be had that like other people had access to, you know, the property, or the DNA only proves that Celeste was present. The purchases may be innocent, like for a music video, I don't know. Ultimately, the prosecution must connect those pieces together, but based off of what we've been reading, it doesn't seem as though it's gonna be a hard puzzle to find. I think at the beginning, it might have been more of like 150 piece or 100 piece puzzle, and now we're down to something that like an 8-piece puzzle, something that I Love Puzzles wouldn't even touch because it's not even difficult enough. David also made the motive very, very easy for the prosecution to put together to show why he potentially was the one who had ended her life. There are explicit photos and messages between the two of them showing that they had some sort of intimate relationship. There were pregnancy and aberration discussions happening throughout their text message exchanges. And allegedly there were also threats to expose the relationship that those two had, knowing that this could potentially ruin David's career, seeing as though Celeste was a minor after all. And if you're dumb enough to date somebody who is a minor, get her pregnant, and put all these things out there in the open like that, you probably are dumb enough to panic when she says that she's gonna go public with these things and potentially do something stupid like end her life. So if you're asking why this potentially took so long, about 15 months from the initial ending of Celeste's life all the way up until the point where they're saying that David had to stand trial, is because while the internet did prove some sort of relationship between the two, the prosecution probably needed some sort of concrete evidence as to why he did these things, what he exactly did, what they can kind of stick him with in the court of law. And to be honest with you, the strength in the evidence comes from both parties working together. I do believe that the prosecution looked at what the internet was putting out there and then also what they were able to gather doing their due diligence. And it seems as though they are building an extremely, and I do mean extremely, strong case for a dumbass criminal who would do a dumbass thing. And so while that does explain why it took so long for them to finally say that we're gonna put David on trial, it doesn't answer why Celeste was not protected much earlier before any of this even got to this point. I read this People article about why it potentially took so long to arrest David, why it potentially took so long to make him face the music. And it's a question that a lot of people have because I know that they are so angry that somebody would do this to somebody so young, but there's a lot to really dig through. Look, I can't talk about all of it on YouTube because I know for a fact this would get age restricted, and I do want this message to get out there because I want this young lady to get as much justice as she potentially can. But let's just say that there were, of course, decomposed remains, but her body was cut up. I mean, it was unrecognizable to a certain extent. The crime scene is very unclear. A timeline needed to be constructed. And ultimately, after an examination, like there needed to be some sort of cause of death. They also had to persuade like the younger people that were involved in this situation to potentially stand up and speak out against whoever David may have done this dastardly deed to this young 14-year-old girl. I understand that the internet might have had David dead to rights almost instantaneously, but this is something that is careful. You don't want this person to walk away after potentially committing a crime. You got to gather the cell phone records, the Tesla data, the purchase history, the internet search records, and witness interviews from people who might be afraid to speak out because they were afraid to speak out about a relationship that shouldn't have been going on for so long. What makes you think it would be any different in a situation where they need to have him go on trial? And ultimately, the biggest difference between social media and the actual justice system is that they need the actual proof. They don't need the suspicion of it all. I think everybody can acknowledge that it looks very suspicious that this grown adult man is with this 14-year-old girl, but they need concrete evidence to say that he actually did the thing that he did. And ultimately, it's looking like the math is starting to math, that David was the one who is behind all this. And while all that stuff can explain why, you know, once she finally did get her life ended, you know, the police decided to take their time about all this. But what doesn't get explained is the years prior to that when they were having having a relationship when she was under the age of 14, and David is dating her, toting her around on all these tours. He's public with her. People are seeing this grown man with this clearly childlike looking individual and not saying anything. And I don't think that's just the prosecutors, but like, where were the parents? Where were the other adults? Where were the other young adults, teens or whatever that were around David that saw this and didn't question anything, say that this was weird, you know, kind of separate themselves from this whole thing? I know that it's tough to get an answer out of all this, and I don't want to put any like specific blame on one person, but I just needed to be clear. If you think that the prosecution failed or is failing because they took so long to get, you know, all this evidence together, then I would probably say that you're wrong. But people did fail Celeste nonetheless, and that was all the people who for years turned a blind eye to a grown man being with a 14-year-old child and seeing this relationship progress to an extent where they were getting matching tattoos and just being creepily weird even past the age gap. All in all, the hearing explained why these prosecutors needed so long in order to build a case against David. They wanted to make sure that it was ironclad and concrete. But the harder question is, why wasn't she protected much sooner so that maybe this situation could have been avoided? Only silver lining in all of this is that because David was so stupid in all of this, it seems as though Celeste will get the justice and potentially protection that she needed while she was living in her afterlife. Because it looks like this guy's going down.